Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. What are we witnessing? What is this, besides the obvious, the latest attempt on President Trump's life? It certainly feels like the convulsions of an establishment that is desperate to keep its stranglehold on power. For more on that, I want to turn to a guy who's written the book on the subject. It's called American Leviathan, The Birth of the Administrative State and Progressive Authoritarianism. Ned Ryun is about as smart of a political observer that you're going to find anywhere. He's the founder and CEO of American Majority, and he joins us now. Ned, good to have you with us, sir.
Yeah, great to be with you, Vince. Appreciate it.
The birth of the administrative state and progressive authoritarianism. What are we witnessing right now in the United States?
So we're witnessing the end of about 100-year, I would argue, failed experiment, Vince, in which the progressive movement, which began in this country late 1800s, early 1900s, just decided that they were done with the Constitution. The whole movement was about destroying the moral and political authority of the U.S. Constitution, destroying the machinery of the Republic, and rejecting it wholesale, which, again, is ironic that we're talking about this today, the signing of the Constitution. This is Constitution Day, September 17th.
Yeah.
But they rejected it wholesale, and in the place of a republic decided, well, for us to have greater advance, greater progress, to really achieve the perfection of mankind in this world, which is what they believe, Vince, we're going to put together an administrative state filled with an unelected bureaucracy of a so-called educated elite. And the only separation they believed in, Vince, was separation of that administrative state from any political ability. And then really the vision was that those unelected bureaucrats would do the governing of this country. And people will find that maybe a bit shocking. What about our constitutional republic? I think that's been a bit of an illusion in regards to how D.C. has worked for decades. Well, the problem then becomes, Vince, when the great outsider shows up on January of 2017, Donald J. Trump, and still thinks we're operating under a constitutional republic and says, I'm the duly elected president of the United States. I'm the one that decides policy. And they said, we don't think so. We think we decide. And really, if you were to peel everything away, Vince, everything that's happened really over the last 10 years between D.C. and you can call it the permanent D.C., Washington, D.C., has been about the conflict about who decides and a clash of two very different governing philosophies.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples of what you're talking about. One of them is they've normalized this idea, for instance, that the Department of Justice operates outside of the executive branch, that it has no accountability to the President of the United States. It's supposed to be independent. The President shouldn't have any role whatsoever in the Department of Justice. Well, no, the founders didn't create an additional branch of government called the Department of Justice. It's under the President. Or when Trump would question generals, they acted like he was violating some sort of sacred principle that the generals are supposed to be more impressive and more important than he is. Or when he made demands of NATO, they thought they were acting like he was doing something that is forbidden. The President of the United States demanding that NATO countries live up to their obligations? What is that?
Again, it comes down to they think they are the ones that decide. And the President of the United States really has served more as I would argue, mask. Vince, has to be something of a masquerade to give the illusion that somehow elections matter, when in fact elections come and go, administrations come and go, the state remains. But no, I mean, this is the crazy part that we're experiencing right now, that you come down to the head of the executive branch, and a unified theory that the executive branch answers to is the President of the United States. And you're seeing a lot of people go, well, no, that's not how it works. Well, actually, that's how the founders intended that it would work. And the administrative state actors said, we don't think so. And the crazy part, too, about what's taking place, what they want to do is consolidate power. The progressives did inside the administrative state. They wanted the executive, the legislative, and the judicial because they believed consolidated power was what was needed for progress. Again, completely antithetical to the founders and believing in diffusion of power, which, by the way, is the greatest protector of our natural rights, the diffusion of power, not the Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. And here we are in which these bureaucrats are thinking they are the ones that govern, and Donald Trump saying, no, I'm the one that governs. And so when you see them responding so vociferously, calling him Hitler, calling him an existential threat to democracy, It's really their version of democracy, which has nothing to do with representative democracy.
Yeah.
And he's an existential threat because they know this, and I think Donald Trump has now figured this out, that if a powerful executive were coming to the executive branch of his own volition and with the political courage, he could devolve the administrative state in 4 years. A lot of it, at least.
Yes, and restore the power to the people. That's so.
Yes.
So what this is throughout history we've seen this same game over and over, which is totalitarian regimes will dress up their raw exertions of power in the language of democracy. This is why you have the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is North Korea, controlled by Kim Jong-un. It's not democratic. It's not a republic. Or when you have the People's Republic of China, it's controlled by the commies. It's not a republic in any meaningful sense. This is always the language that they wield as they consolidate totalitarian power.
And I would point out with all those countries, they have a Bill of Rights. But there are really no rights. There are no natural inherent rights. And our founders put together a rights-based government. Rights come from God. That to secure those rights, governments are instituted among men. The greatest threat to our natural inherent rights is, again, this consolidated power in which government pulls it together and is able to abuse our natural inherent rights. The founders knew that. They didn't trust imperfect human nature. So I kind of detail a lot of the history and the philosophy behind the progressives, behind the administrative state, behind the rejection of the Constitution, and then ultimately where did we get to today, where we have this massive, sprawling leviathan of bureaucracy filled with these unelected bureaucrats who, I got to tell you, Vince, they are not governing. First of all, they shouldn't be governing. They have taken powers unconstitutionally. They are dictating to the American people, this is what we think is best for you, and if you don't like it, you dirty little peasants, we're going to compel you and force you to submit. Has nothing to do with the Constitution or a constitutional republic. And I have to tell you, Vince, studying the history of it, it is deeply un-American in its approach to governing.
Well, they've also, over the same time frame that you just laid out, Ned Ryun, over the last century, they built in all sorts of protections from the American people, holding them accountable. So, you know, in American history, we called it civil service reform, but the concept was that if you're a government employee, there should be no way for the American people to fire you. It can't happen.
So this is the problem. Again, they wanted to separate out the administrative state, but then it begs a question, Vince. How do the American people have redress for their grievances if they're really being governed by unelected bureaucrats that are separated out from any accountability? And I think Americans are waking up to this, realizing something is wrong in D.C., but they haven't quite put their finger on it. That's why I wrote this book, to explain to them in as concise a way as possible, here's what's going on. And I would argue one of the fundamental questions for the 2024 elections is the administrative state. What are we to do with this administrative state? And I hope enough of the American people realize not what we want. Powerful executive getting back in. The Supreme Court has really started to step up. This summer they made two very important decisions, Chevron deference.
Yep.
And then also saying the SEC tribunal, Securities and Exchange, and a lot of departments and agencies have their own tribunals that 90% of the time rule in favor of those departments and agencies. The Supreme Court said, first of all, undermines an independent judiciary, which was very important to the founders, and also annihilates the idea of the Seventh Amendment, right to trial by jury. So between a powerful executive stepping in, the Supreme Court stepping up, and I think more of the American people understanding what's taking place and saying this is not legitimate, the administrative state, I think you might start to see some momentum in the right direction and saying, we would like to have a republic back in place and really, quite frankly, a restoration of all of our rights.
Yeah, I know. With so much going wrong in government, sometimes you lose sight of the fact that there were a lot of very good decisions made by the Supreme Court this last term that did restore power to the people in a very meaningful way, which is a very, very big deal. It's wild that this is the world we're living in. Do you think, as you assess the current political environment, your book, American Leviathan, and all of the things you're assessing about these unelected bureaucrats and the power of the establishment, is this why you get a guy like Dick Cheney endorsing Kamala Harris? Is that what leads to that?
100%. I mean, first of all, it's kind of the neocon globalist warmongers of the world unite.
Yeah.
Then let's face it, Darth Vader endorsing the Empire, shocker. But I make the point in the book, the last two presidents to really say we reject the premise of this administrative state before Trump, Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon. And then every president since then, including George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, really accepted the legitimacy of the administrative state. And the real problem with it was the fact that they weren't running it, right? They didn't have a problem with saying this is, bureaucracy and unelected bureaucrats governing is a problem. They just wanted to be able to run it.
Yeah.
And then Donald J. Trump shows up and goes, I reject the premise. That's why they consider him an existential threat. That's why they call him Hitler and all these other things, because at the end of the day, he is an existential threat to the status quo of permanent D.C., the administrative state. And they know that he has figured out a few things, Vince. He has figured out what the problem is. If he can get a few things right, if he wins, and then gets a few things right, like transition personnel and the head of PPO, and sends in the right decision makers to the various departments and agencies to implement his vision to deconstruct the administrative state, game on.
Do you think he has the right people around him now? One of and among the people that I'm thinking of as I ask you that question, J.D. Vance as his running mate.
Yep.
Does he reject the premise? He has people like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK supporting the transition. They seem to reject the premise. Do you think he's got the right people joining the fight?
I think he's starting to build out the team that all reject the premise that this is legitimate, the administrative state. I think he's got to make sure he gets transition personnel right, because you have to get the plum book for every administration, Vince, called about 5,000 positions, maybe 300, 400, 500 important decision makers that have to be decided by transition personnel and then the head of PPO. He's got to nail those two positions. And if he gets those two positions right, which I have to tell you, he didn't quite get them right the first time around until last year when he got Johnny McEntee to run PPO. If he can get those right, as well as a team around him that fundamentally agrees that we reject the premise, we're moving in the right direction.
How do you assess, and this is when I talk to you, I typically ask you the state of the election in terms of the mechanics of it. I saw some good early indicators that Pennsylvania ballots are looking good for Republicans. How do you assess things right now, Ned?
The real numbers, I think we've had this conversation, Vince. I look at polls as very nice. I enjoy a good one. I'm a political nerd, but the real numbers are the ballot universes and partisan registration. And, we've talked about Arizona, but Republicans, last time I checked, 75,000 ballot advantage for Republicans over Democrats in Arizona, over 250,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats in Arizona. That's significantly better than 2020. Pennsylvania, Democrats have lost about 300 and some thousand in their partisan registration advantage, and their ballot requests are down about 300,000 versus 2020, and Republicans are up significantly. So in the real numbers that count, and I remind you, Pennsylvania was only won by Biden by about 80,000 votes. In the numbers that count, significantly better for Trump in 2024 than they were in 2020.
So there's energy. The energy is out there for this.
There's energy, but and we're 49 days out. There's energy. The numbers are right, and now it comes down to who's going to have the better chase and early vote program to get these votes in as quickly as possible. And I've been encouraging people then play the game by the rules. You might not like the rules, but the rules are if there's absentee ballots dropping in Pennsylvania 50 days out in early voting, take advantage of that. The economics of early voting, you're going to save Trump a ton of money by voting early.
Yeah.
Because if you vote early, it's about $10 to $12 per vote. Wait a couple weeks, about 20. If you wait until Election Day, it could cost $100 for your vote. Get out and vote early, get the votes in, so that coming into Election Day, Republicans typically dominate on Election Day. And if Trump is anywhere near the lead in the absentee ballot and early voting numbers coming into Election Day, he will win.
I just want to talk about the economics of what you just said so people understand. And I think I understand what you're saying, so correct me if I'm wrong. But if I vote early, my address is yanked from the universe of things, places where they need to send political mailers. So the political mail ends to your home if you actually cast your ballot.
Mail ends, door knocks end, phone calls end, text end, digital will probably end. If you turn your vote in, if you're using a sophisticated data approach like I am, like Trump, your name will be removed as the universe continues to shrink and to shrink. And Vince, a really good rule of thumb is in the absentee ballot chase, you want to get 80% plus of those ballots in, and you're going to give yourself a really good chance of winning. But it's all data-driven. You vote, your name drops off the list. And I tell people all the time, the chase is a series of targeted harassments. If you want the beatings to end, return your ballot or go vote early. You'll get off the list.
And you're going to save the Trump campaign a lot of money so they can focus those resources elsewhere.
Yeah,
and Ned Ryun.
Like me, you'll save us a ton of money.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Well, that's why I'm going to be at the Fairfax Government Center, 8 o'clock, first day, first hour for Virginia's early vote this Friday. It's going to be awesome. I'm inviting everybody else out there. I'll have the WMAL car out there. You'll see me. Our plan is to have coffee and donuts, so it'll be a great time. Hey, Ned Ryun, thank you very much. Congratulations on the new book, American Leviathan, out now. Get a hold of it. Thank you, Ned.
Thanks, Vince. I appreciate it.
Of course, always good to talk. All right, let's go to the phones. I've got Mike calling in from Fairfax now, line 5. Mike, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, Mike. Mr. Mike.
Hi, Vince. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Mike. What's on your mind?
Got a question and a concern about the election and about the early voting.
Sure.
My question is, and I really hate asking this question, but if Trump doesn't make it to Election Day, what happens? Does Vance still issues if he wants it? And my concern is if I vote early for Trump and then he's not on the ballot, is my vote just gone?
We're wading into some tricky waters, is clearly, and your question clearly gets at that. Here's what I do know from my perspective on this, which may not be completely right, but I'm gonna give you what I think happens here. One, on your ballot, you don't actually vote for the person; you vote for electors for the person. So if you look at, for instance, the sample ballot in Virginia, you are doing electors for Donald J. Trump and J.D. Vance. Vance is on the ballot; he's one of the names you're voting for. Electors for him. Now, what we would assume based on that is that moving forward, that the electors who represent the will of the people of the state that you vote in would go with whoever won on the ballot. That's how it usually works. And the party is likely to say, hey, J.D. Vance, your name's on the ballot. You're going to be the nominee now, right? That's where my speculation goes. But honestly, I don't have the expertise beyond that to answer that question, Mike. But God willing, that's not where we are. I pray that we can have a very real election with a very authentic result, with everybody making it to Election Day. And it's a shame, just like Mike said, that you even have to raise questions like that. And yet here we are, after 2 very public assassination attempts on President Trump. More of your calls coming up. Also, Kamala Harris spoke to that National Association of Black Journalists today. What kind of reception did she get? Were they mean to her, too? Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:36, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Kamala Harris, what will you do to improve the economy? Kamala Harris sitting down with the National Association of Black Journalists today. She was asked a question she's been asked like 3 or 4 times in the 3 or 4 actual interviews she's done. It's a basic one. How are you going to fix the economy? You know, the one you destroyed? Here she goes again. She was a middle-class kid.
They can just get their foot in the door to be able to then engage in what will prove to be their opportunity to build intergenerational wealth. And here's my personal experience coming at that.
Tell me.
I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother was hardworking. She raised me and my sister Maya.
By the way, can I just point out, even though she just keeps repeating the same thing over and over because that's the script they gave her, what does that even mean? Is that some sort of hardship that you grew up a middle-class kid? What does that mean? Am I supposed to? Oh, my goodness. No way. The middle, what was that like? Do you have the scars still? Growing up in the middle class? What is she? And even that, it's pretty kind of a lie. She grew up definitely in an elite set. Both of her parents were upper crust college professors. She was growing up in Canada. She had this very exotic lifestyle. I don't know what she's talking about, but this idea that I grew up a middle-class kid, if she just keeps saying it over and over, maybe it becomes true. She's trying to act relatable. That's the point to all of this. I'm relatable. It's the reason she changes her accent based on the audience. She wants to pretend to be relatable, and she just keeps on coming across as phony.
Coming at that, I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother was hardworking. She raised me and my sister Maya. She saved up, and it was only by the time I was a teenager that she could afford to actually buy her first home.
Egads.
And I know, and I identify with, I know where I come from.
Sure you do. I know where I come from. She did a lot of rambling today. A lot of rambling today. I am going to spare you the entirety of this rambling, but in case you were wondering, is she still like that? Uh-huh.
It's a crying shame. I mean, my heart breaks for this community. You know, there were children, elementary school children.
She's talking about Springfield, Ohio now.
Who, it was school photo day. You remember what that's like? Going to school on picture day? Who were dressed up in their best, got all ready, knew what they were going to wear the night before, and had to be evacuated.
Because of hoax phone calls from overseas? Remember? Governor Mike DeWine said yesterday all these bomb threats into Springfield, Ohio are hoaxes. They're hoaxes. He said they're coming in from overseas. And here's Kamala Harris helping a foreign election interference operation. Here she is doing that, right? What are we told all the time about these things? You're going to allow a foreign country to interfere in our elections? Here she is going, yeah, Donald Trump did this. No. Governor Mike DeWine said they chased all these down, and these were foreign hoax phone calls targeting Springfield, Ohio. But she likes the version where it was a Trump supporter making the phone call. She likes that version, so she's going to stick with that.
Children. A whole community put in fear. And I'll say a couple things about it. One,
please say anything. Literally say anything.
You know, I learned a long time ago in my career, having a background as a prosecutor, when you have these positions, when you have that kind of microphone in front of you, you really ought to understand at a very deep level how much your words have meaning.
All right, so what does that mean? When you call Donald Trump a threat to democracy, what kind of meaning should we derive from those words? What kind of power should we sense in those words?
I learned at a very young stage of my career that the meaning of my words could impact whether somebody was free or in prison.
Well, that explains your career. You know, all those people who went to prison who didn't commit crimes, you had guys on death row with exonerating evidence who couldn't get a hearing because of her. That explains it all. It was that because I knew that the words that came out of my mouth would affect life and death. Sure. You were the last one in the room when Joe Biden decided to get out of Afghanistan in the worst possible way, leading to the deaths of a lot of people. So, yeah, your words actually did play a massive role in the lives of the deaths of these great American heroes.
Stage of my career. The meaning of my words could impact whether somebody was free or in prison. As Attorney General, I was of California, fifth largest economy in the world.
Up talk.
I was acutely aware that my words could move markets.
Move markets. She's drunk on that power, just to be clear. She loves that power. My words can move markets. She probably says that to herself in the morning when she wakes up, stares in the mirror. My words can move markets.
When you are bestowed with a microphone that is that big.
She's talking about Trump now. She says he has a big microphone.
There is a profound responsibility that comes with that.
Yes, that's right. With great power, you know how it goes. Uncle Ben said it.
That is an extension of what should not be lost in this moment, this concept of the public trust.
Mm-hmm.
To then...
You know the funniest part about this audio? You know what she's really doing? Stalling for time. She's trying to survive the fact that she's speaking in a setting where there's a teleprompter not in front of her. And she's sitting with three journalists who I think, based on all public accounts, gave her the easiest possible conversation today, and she's barely keeping her head above water right here.
Understand what the public trust means. It means that you have been invested with trust.
What?
To be responsible in the way you use your words, much less how you conduct yourself.
I do love the definition game that she plays, where she uses the same word in the definition.
And especially when you have been and then seek to be again President of the United States of America.
That's how you know she's stalling for time. She went with the full title, President of the United States of America. That's like, you know when kids do papers, exams, papers in high school, they try and the teachers know all the tricks. They know what you're up to. They tell you 1.5 line spacing, and you put 1.7 in, thinking that you can slip one past them. You're like, well, this way I could shorten out this paper real quick. Oh, we had all sorts of tricks. Change the size of the punctuation marks, always double space each sentence, right? The beginning of each sentence. A little bit of spread on the size of the letters. This is what she's doing here. She's wielding high school tactics to survive a presidential interview.
And so I go back to, it's a crying shame, literally.
Literally.
What's happening to those families, those children in that community, not to mention what is happening in terms of...
When she says that, she doesn't mean the American citizens who are having their lives upended and destroyed. She's saying it's a crying shame that anybody noticed.
Look, you say you care about law enforcement resources being put into this because of these serious threats that are being issued against...
This is the defund the police lady. This is the chick who called for having prisoners bailed out. People in jail bailed out Minneapolis after they burned the city. Now talking about what a great defender of law enforcement she is.
A community that is living a productive, good life before this happened.
What?
And spewing...
well, that'll tell you everything about it, doesn't it? So she's saying that everything in Springfield was great until Donald Trump noticed things were bad. Do you hear that? Everybody was living productive, good lives. Some of them on the street now, but, you can make a good life on the street. These reports out of Springfield of people losing their homes, being kicked out by their landlords. We know, I just pulled the Zillow data. I talked about it this past week. 44% increase in rents. 44% in 1 year. September of last year to September of this year. 44% increase in the median rent price. Meanwhile, across the country, 5%. There was a 5% upward movement in the median rent price across the whole entire country. Springfield, Ohio, 44%. What was the cause of that, would you say? What led to that? Does that sound like everything was going swell in Springfield until last week at the presidential debate?
Lies that are grounded in tropes that are age-old. And look, I said it not very far from here the other day at the debate. This is not new. This is not new in terms of these tropes. This is not new in terms of where it's coming from. And, whether it is refusing to rent to people,
What was the question, by the way? What did they even ask her? What's your favorite color? How did she get here?
Black families, whether it is taking out a full-page ad in the New York Times against 5 innocent
now she's spreading hoaxes.
Black and Latino teenagers, the Central Park 5, calling for their execution.
Yeah, he didn't.
Whether it is referring to the first black president of the United States with a lie, birther lies.
That was started by the Hillary Clinton people. Do you remember that, the birther thing? The questions about President Obama's birth started with Hillary Clinton supporters. And the Democrats have, what's the phrase? They've memory hold that.
And look.
Also, it was always kind of silly as an American mother. Like, come on.
The American people deserve, and I do believe want better than this. I do believe that. I know.
What do you know?
The vast majority of us as Americans know we have so much more in common than what separates us. I know that.
Well, then why are you trying to separate us so much?
I know that regardless of someone's background, their race, their gender, their geographic location, I know that people are deeply troubled by what is happening to that community in Springfield,
Yeah,
Ohio.
We are.
And it's got to stop.
That's right. That's why you need to be voted out.
And we've got to say that you cannot be entrusted.
That's right. You can't.
With standing behind the seal of the President of the United States
exactly
of America.
Right. She's endorsing Trump. I can feel it coming.
Engaging in that hateful rhetoric that, as usual,
now you're talking,
is designed to divide us as a country.
Preach, baby.
Is designed to have people pointing fingers at each other.
Oh, she's indicting. This is a perfect indictment. She said she was a prosecutor. Here she is going at the root of the problem. She's attacking the Biden-Harris administration. I can just feel it.
Designed to do that. And I think most people in our country, regardless of their race, are starting to see through this nonsense.
Amen.
And to say, you know what, let's turn the page on this. This is exhausting.
Turn the page. That's right. Because what page are we staring at right now? What's the current page? Everyone look down at your books. What page are we on? The Biden-Harris administration. Okay, everyone together now. Like, what's her name? Gwen? Is that Gwen Walls? She wants to, quote, turn the page. Isn't that right? That's her thing. Turn the page, she says, in the most annoying, hectoring voice you can possibly summon up. Turn the page, she's saying. Let's do it. Let's turn the page. We're all staring at the Biden-Harris page right now, and everyone's sick of that page. That page is disgusting.
And it's harmful.
Yes.
And it's hateful.
Yes.
And grounded in some age-old stuff.
Oh, I feel it.
That we should not...
Like the entire history of the Democrat Party. She's exactly right.
...not have the tolerance for.
Yes.
So let's turn the page and chart a new way forward and say, you can't have that microphone again.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. First of all, I didn't realize. The beginning, she started off real slow. I didn't have a lot of hope for this. By the end, she recorded an entire Trump campaign ad just now. At the end, Donald Trump should finish the clip you just heard with, I'm Donald Trump and I endorse this message. That's what he should do. And just put on screen all of the things that the Biden-Harris administration has been doing to this country. Go ahead. Use it. And I'm serious, by the way. Everything she just said was an indictment of their time in office. The division they've led to, the fact that they are just appealing to the worst possible instincts of the country, the racial nonsense. It's done. It's enough. It's over. It needs to be over. It is time to turn the page. Turn the page on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
And my favorite thing about Kamala Harris's interviews is I think that we win about 100,000 votes every time she answers a question. Because, you know, the difference, there are all these differences, all these policy differences, all these things that I could point to. But you know the biggest difference, I think, between President Trump's campaign and Kamala Harris's campaign? It's that Kamala Harris speaks to the American people like they're children, and we speak to the American people like their fellow citizens.
Yeah, that's great. That's J.D. Vance just moments ago. Let me go here to John in Fredericksburg, line 5. Hello, John. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Nice to talk to you again.
Yes, sir.
I was calling in and saying I've heard Kamala Harris at least twice now talk about her middle-class upbringing with her mother, and I noticed she didn't say anything about her father.
Such a smart point.
So she's literally trying to perpetrate that, she is the daughter of a single mother. And instead of having a fairly nuclear family.
What a smart observation. The other thing she may be trying to avoid is what Trump brought up at the debate this past week. Remember this?
She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's...
Yeah, remember that? I don't know. I think she's trying to skip right past that topic. Thank you, John. I'm gonna noodle on that. I'm going to think about that some more because that's a good observation. She keeps bringing up her mother. My mother! She bought a house. What happened to your dad? What was going on there? Why don't she talk about him at all? Boy, she really has a war on men, doesn't she? Including her own father. All right. Hey, coming up next, the great one, Mark Levin, will navigate the day's news for you right here on the legendary WMAL.